Understanding personnel requirements is crucial for any laboratory seeking ISO, IEC 17025 accreditation. In this Consumer Times episode, we break down everything you need to know about personnel competence, training, authorization, and documentation requirements under ISO 17025-2017. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Consumer Times. I am Dr. Arun Kumar, and today we are diving deep into one of the most critical aspects of ISO, IEC 17025-2017 personnel requirements. If you are involved in laboratory operations, quality management, or seeking accreditation, this video is essential viewing. Before we jump into personnel specifics, please give your valuable comments, like, share, and subscribe our channel to motivate us. Let's quickly understand what ISO 17025 is. The international standard for testing and calibration laboratories. It's the global benchmark that demonstrates a laboratory's competence to produce valid, reliable results. But here's the thing, even the most advanced equipment and sophisticated procedures are worthless without competent personnel operating them. That's why Clause 6.2 of ISO 17025-2017 is entirely dedicated to personnel requirements. Think about it this way. Your laboratory might have state-of-the-art mass spectrometers, high-precision balances, and impeccable procedures, but if the person operating that equipment doesn't have the right competence, training, or authorization, your results could be compromised. And compromised results mean compromised accreditation, compromised reputation, and ultimately, compromised consumer safety. The foundation of ISO 17025 personnel requirements is competence. The standard explicitly states that the laboratory must ensure that all personnel, whether permanent, temporary, or contracted, who could influence laboratory activities, are competent to perform their assigned tasks. But what does competence actually mean in this context? Competence is a combination of education, qualifications, training, technical knowledge, skills, and experience. It's not just about having a degree or certificate, it's about demonstrating that you can actually perform the required tasks correctly and consistently. For example, a technician might have a master's degree in chemistry, but if they've never operated a gas chromatograph, they're not yet competent to conduct GC analysis unsupervised. Let's start with the basics: education and qualifications. ISO 17025 doesn't prescribe specific educational requirements because laboratories operate in vastly different fields. A microbiological testing lab has different needs than a mechanical calibration lab. However, the standard requires that personnel have appropriate education relevant to their work. For technical staff performing testing or calibration, this typically means relevant scientific or engineering degrees. For example, staff conducting chemical analysis should have backgrounds in chemistry or related fields. Calibration technicians should understand metrology and measurement science. Senior technical staff and laboratory managers often need higher qualifications, master's degrees or specialized certifications, but formal education is just the starting point. The laboratory must also consider specialized qualifications, professional certifications, and regulatory requirements specific to their field. For instance, if you're running a medical laboratory, certain tests may legally require personnel with specific clinical certifications. Training is where competence truly develops. ISO 17025 requires that all personnel receive adequate training, both initially when they join and continuously throughout their employment. This isn't just a nice to have, it's a mandatory requirement. Initial training must cover several key areas. First, the laboratory's quality management system. Personnel need to understand policies, procedures, and their role in maintaining quality. Second, specific technical training for the tasks they'll perform. This includes hands-on training with equipment, understanding test methods, and learning safety protocols. Third, training on uncertainty estimation, quality control, and data handling relevant to their work, but training doesn't stop after onboarding. The laboratory must provide ongoing training to ensure personnel stay current with new techniques, equipment updates, revised methods, and changing standards. Think of it as continuous professional development. A good laboratory maintains annual training plans for each staff member, addressing both individual development needs and organizational requirements. Here's a critical point that many laboratories overlook. Training alone doesn't authorize someone to perform work independently. ISO 17025 clearly requires that personnel are authorized before they perform specific laboratory activities. Authorization comes only after demonstrating competence. So how does this work in practice? After initial training, personnel work under supervision. During this period, their work is monitored, checked, and verified by authorized personnel. The laboratory maintains records of this supervised work. Only when the individual consistently demonstrates competence, through successful completion of supervised work, proficiency testing, or competence assessments, can they be formally authorized. Authorization isn't a one-time event either. Personnel may be authorized for specific activities, specific methods, or specific equipment. For example, a technician might be authorized to operate HPLC systems but not LCMS systems until they receive additional training and demonstrate competence on that equipment. Supervision is equally important, especially for trainees, students, or personnel new to specific tasks. The standard requires that supervisors themselves be competent in the activities they're supervising. You can't have someone who's never performed a test supervising someone learning the test. Now let's talk about documentation, because if it's not documented, it didn't happen. That's a fundamental principle in quality management. ISO 17025 requires laboratories to maintain extensive personnel records that demonstrate competence. What should these records include? First, educational qualifications, copies of degrees, diplomas, and certificates. Second, detailed training records showing what training was provided, when, by whom, and how competence was assessed. Third, authorization records clearly stating what activities each person is authorized to perform. Fourth, ongoing competence monitoring records, including internal audits, proficiency testing results, and performance reviews. Many laboratories maintain individual personnel files containing all this information. Modern laboratories often use electronic systems that track training completion, authorization status, and even send alerts when refresher training is due. This documentation serves multiple purposes. It satisfies accreditation requirements, demonstrates due diligence if results are challenged, and helps with succession planning and resource management. Different personnel have different competence requirements. Let's break this down by role. Technical testing and calibration staff need strong technical competence in their specific area, understanding of measurement uncertainty, and ability to handle quality control data. They need hands-on skills with equipment and software, and increasingly, they need data analysis capabilities. Laboratory managers and technical leaders need broader competence. Beyond technical skills, they need understanding of the entire quality management system, knowledge of accreditation requirements, ability to interpret standards, and leadership skills. They're responsible for ensuring the overall technical validity of results. Quality managers need competence in quality systems, auditing, risk management, and standards interpretation. They may not need deep technical knowledge of every test method, but they need to understand quality principles across all laboratory activities. Support staff, including those handling samples, managing data, or maintaining equipment, also need appropriate competence for their roles. Even administrative staff need training in quality system basics and confidentiality requirements. Competence isn't static, it must be monitored and maintained. ISO 5 requires ongoing monitoring of personnel performance. This happens through several mechanisms: regular review of work records, participation in proficiency testing schemes, internal quality control results, technical reviews of reports, and periodic assessments. When performance issues arise, the laboratory must take corrective action. This might mean additional training, closer supervision, or in some cases, withdrawing authorization until competence is re-established. The standard requires laboratories to identify training needs annually and plan appropriate training activities. So, how do you implement all this effectively? Start by creating clear competence matrices for each role, defining required education, training, skills, and experience. Develop structured training programs with clear learning objectives and assessment criteria. Maintain a training calendar and track completion systematically. Understanding personnel requirements is crucial for any laboratory seeking ISO, IEC 17025 accreditation. In this Consumer Times episode, we break down everything you need to know about personnel competence, training, authorization, and documentation requirements under ISO 17025 is to 2017.